Welcome to Awakening Through Love, the podcast. My name's Martina Hughes,
My name's Rod Gordon.
and it's our first podcast back after a little bit of a pause. And today we're wanting to dive into sensitivity, and that is sensitivity for women, for men, and sensitivity in a relationship and how to navigate that. It's a really big topic. And yeah, is there something you would like to say in terms of introducing sensitivity?
Well, each month in Intimacy Oasis, we explore intimate relationship through a different lens, through a different topic. And this month is specifically sensitivity. And so we're exploring sensitivity and its relationship to us as individuals, to men and to women, and also the impact on that on relationship dynamics and how that influences and impacts relational
Mm,
dynamics.
mm. I find that sensitivity is often a topic that's not very well understood. I think often people have some views on sensitivity that have sensitivity confused with reactivity.
Mm,
So that feels like probably a good starting point is even for us to describe what sensitivity is, what reactivity is, and discerning between the two.
mm.
Since you're so beautiful with defining these things, I'd love to invite you to step into that.
Mm. This is that moment where I wish we planned these things and I could just know exactly what to say. Right. Well, sensitivity, it's noticing the subtle nuance, the experience, the feelings, the subtle energies that actually influence life, influence decision making, states of being, the identity of self. It's all made up of a series of experiences
Mm,
that are ever so subtle. And those sensitivities and influences that are there often drive behavior,
mm,
drive beliefs, drive choices. And so our life emerges from our response to the subtle nuance of life, whether it's conscious or unconscious.
mm,
And for most of us, it's primarily unconscious. Like, and what I mean by that, and I'm including even really enlightened beings
mhm,
within that, just
mhm,
as an example, uh, a human being can only perceive like 1% of the light spectrum.
mm,
So if I can only sense with my eyes and with my senses this 1% of the light spectrum, because we can't see infrared, we can't see X-ray, ultraviolet light, black light, all there's so many light spectrums that we can't see. But light and energy makes up so much of our experience, especially on a subtle level,
mhm,
that by having an awareness of these things, we can start to respond differently. But if we can only notice 1%, that means I can't see 99% of reality.
mm,
I can't experience it. I can't be aware of it. This organism I'm in cannot perceive that.
mm,
It's incredibly limited, like the human body and its capacity to see and be and understand. So
mm,
I like to hold that awareness
mhm.
that this body is incredibly limited in its
Yes.
capacity, especially to see with the eyes.
Mm,
But seeing can start to exist on different levels.
mhm,
So, and in some ways, that's what sensitivity is. Like if I can, you know, listen with my body, listen with my emotions or my feeling state, listen with my mind, listen with my awareness, then I can notice ever more subtle layers and nuance of reality.
mm,
And so by being aware of this, limitation, that I find it helps me to be curious about what is it that I can't see or feel that's happening in this moment. And so for me, it drives self inquiry.
mhm,
Self inquiry creates awareness, and a byproduct of awareness is sensitivity.
mm,
So it's one pathway to understand sensitivity because when I say a byproduct of awareness, what I mean is that the more aware I become, the more subtle nuance I can notice in life.
Mm-hmm.
And each human, depending on how much, attention they've put on these things, will have different capacities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some people don't even believe in feelings because they can't see them. They're not real. Like, okay, well, that's fair, but they
Mm-hmm.
can't feel them either.
Mm-hmm.
So people that can't feel their feelings don't place a lot of value in them,
Mm-hmm.
and don't place a lot of value in their role in their life.
Yes.
So then they can't notice that subtle sensitivity. Then their life is going to revolve primarily around the physical body, around matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so sensitivity, as it comes online, is incredibly uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel particularly good. And the first thing that usually happens to a person who's just beginning in their journey of sensitivity is reactivity,
Mm-hmm.
which you can see quite widely spread in our culture. It's people are reactive because they believe they're sensitive. But if I'm reacting to the sensitivity that I have, then I'm not feeling whatever the sensitivity is inviting me to feel or
Mm-hmm.
inviting me to see, because I'm reacting to it. A reaction is any action taken in response to a feeling, thought, idea, or belief.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I take an action, so I react to it and go, this is gross, I feel this, it's like, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the thing is, the reaction, then in that moment, I'm no longer feeling whatever that sensitivity is. So reaction takes me away from sensitivity, and I close down uh, in I close down to, or make myself unavailable for, the subtle feelings that are
Mm-hmm.
arising. And then I redirect my attention and energy outwards, usually as it'll be as some form of judgment, criticism, or blame. And under the excuse of, and I'm sensitive, but then also desiring other people to modify their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm entering the domain of control and manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
So this reactivity doesn't create anything beautiful. It doesn't add more beauty to the moment. It doesn't add more love. It creates devastation and destruction, division and separation.
Yes.
So reactivity is totally separate to sensitivity, and it's not really a byproduct of sensitivity. Reactivity is highlighting uh, an inability to be with the discomfort of intense emotional feelings. And the more subtlety we can notice, the more everything else becomes intense, like the volume gets turned up. So things become really loud. And so that sensitivity, it's like both a beauty and a burden, because as things get louder, they get more uncomfortable. So being around people for me, can be incredibly uncomfortable. I used to be such an extrovert and enjoy people's company, and um, I would be energized by spending time with people. Whereas if I spend too much time around people these days, I get depleted and drained, and like I don't really know how to be with all that at this point,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so new to me. It's like confusing to my
Yes.
system.
Yeah.
And so, but even that could be argued as a form of reactivity,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not able to be with the intensity of my experience
Mm-hmm.
in those moments. So,
Yeah.
yeah, sensitivities are really wide topic. It's
Mm.
a really beautiful topic, but there's so much nuance to it. And depending on a person's awareness will depend on, how they even engage with what we're saying.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love there's so many great things you said, and I have, it's like my belly's going ping ping ping, oh, let's dive into this bit and this bit. And I wish I'd like taken a couple of notes, but
Hopefully we hit record on this thing and it's doing its thing.
going back a little bit, because this has been really helpful for me. I've heard you describe, and this may not be exact, so you can adjust if necessary, but I've heard you describe unconsciousness as something that's happening but below the level of our awareness.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just draw that out for one specific reason, because when we come onto this path, hands up, it's very easy to become critical and self-judging, like, oh, I'm being unconscious, I messed up, and
Yeah,
that
yeah, right.
internal harshness. But when you offered me that reframe at one point, that it's
Yeah, yeah.
unconsciousness is simply something happening below the level of my awareness. That reframe helped something in me to relax, and I stopped judging my own unconscious, but also stopped judging my own reactivity, because judgment is also a reaction. So it can be that seeing unconsciousness, seeing reactivity play out, even becoming aware of that can be a really painful and destructive loop of its own. So once I had this tool or this reference as unconscious being something that's happening below the level of my awareness, then that helped me to be able to go, oh, if it's below the level of my awareness, how do I expand my awareness so I can stay present to what's happening rather than reacting? So it's what I want to tease out, how unconsciousness and below the level of awareness can kind of become a tool for a deeper falling in, a deeper kind of listening. One of the ways I see the experience you described as listening with our body, listening with our feeling state, listening with our awareness, it's a state of receptivity. And when we're in a receptive state, we're present with what's happening inside our body. We're present with like the breath, the nuances, the subtleties. We're present to all of what's playing out here. So there's a receiving deeply, whereas, as you said, it's like reaction is typically the energy jumps out of the body and it's on somebody else or some external situation. So just wanted to tease those couple of things out to share from my own experience of some ways that I approach it that helps. Is there anything you would like to add to the conversation about sensitivity and reactivity from your own experiences?
Not that I can think of. I think you kind of captured it all. There's not really anything else to say in terms of like the unconscious piece. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
No, I think like you said, all the pieces, all the main pieces. So there's not, if I try and say anything to it, I'm just going to repeating what you've already said.
Okay. Actually, something that just occurred to me is how easy, how conditioned the training in our bodies, in our culture is around reactivity. Like there's so much, it's almost like as a culture we've been in, marathon training for reactivity. And so making that switch from reactivity towards sensitivity feels like it's a big jump sometimes for people to take that jump. What would you say is the first step in that process from retraining the body out of reactivity and towards sensitivity?
Meditation.
Yeah. Can you say specifically why?
Yeah, like in many ways, the activity, it's not the right word, but it's the best one I'm coming up with right now. The activity of meditation, which essentially, if I broke it down to the simplest form, is it's noticing the, how do I phrase it? Notice, I could say it's noticing the reactive habit patterns of the mind, noticing the patterns of the mind, and noticing the habitual thoughts, noticing thoughts. Like in many ways, these are all the same thing. Just depends who I'm talking to. But so in meditation, we notice when a thought arises, and specifically, like not just noticing. At first, we don't probably notice the thought so much as when I will notice that I'm lost in thought. Noticing I'm lost in thought, interrupting that habitual thought stream that's arisen, because there's no control over thoughts, they just arise. So noticing that, then coming back to being present. Then, notice eventually, it'll go from, it could be 10 minutes into lost in thought when you notice. But that'll slowly become like, 5, 4, 1, noticing a thought arising. And then eventually it's noticing a thought arising and you don't believe it. And that can become almost simultaneous at times. Whereas as an impulse or a thought comes and it's not believed immediately, it's just released. So in that pattern of interrupting the thought, what's actually happening is interrupting an unconscious habit pattern, the habit pattern of being lost in thought or daydreaming about something, and then interrupting that and coming back to being present. That's that activity the activity of meditation in many ways mirrors um, the most skillful interaction we can have with life.
Mm. Mm.
And so, if we want to skillfully navigate life, we need to be able to recognize what's unconscious and habitual,
Mm-hmm.
see through the belief that's lying underneath it, then redirect our attention back to what it is that, who we want to be, what we want to
Mm-hmm.
create, or, basically being present,
Mm-hmm.
redirecting it right back to this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so meditation is the first place to start. And the reason is that building that muscle of noticing, being lost in thought, is learning how to notice unconscious habit patterns. They have a particular feeling that come with them. And it's quite dense and heavy and often murky and yuck. And so when we start to recognize that state of being, it's like, oh, I'm doing some kind of unconscious habit pattern now. Because
Mm-hmm.
to become sensitive is the same pathway as becoming aware. And it's like, how do I learn to see that which I cannot see?
Mm-hmm.
How do I feel what I can't feel?
Mm-hmm.
That's really bloody difficult, because if I could was aware of it, I'd see it or feel it. So how do I learn to see something I don't know how to see? I don't have the skills to see. I can't see. Other people I know can't see. How do I,
Mm-hmm.
like, in some ways, walking this path is trying to do the impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And when we start moving in that direction, it becomes possible
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
simply by placing our attention there. So just want to say that it's often slow and not, it can be particularly uncomfortable and
Mm-hmm.
difficult to
Mm-hmm.
to walk the path of awakening. Is probably the hardest thing a human can do.
Yeah.
It's so difficult, and it requires um, leaning into the depths of our suffering,
Mm-hmm.
and through our sensitivity, being willing to feel the deepest pains that are hiding within our body and being, and seeing through those,
Mm-hmm.
identifying the false beliefs and thoughts that are existing under there that are creating the emotions and the feelings of suffering, and then liberating those so that pattern no longer plays out. That's essentially the path.
Mm-hmm.
And that hurts.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's very uncomfortable. So
Yes.
most people won't do it,
Mm-mm.
because the willingness to be uncomfortable is not part of our culture. In fact, the
Mm-mm.
opposite is the desire to seek comfort. But the
Yes.
shadow side of seeking comfort is ultimately creating a habit of avoiding discomfort.
Mm.
There's nothing wrong with seeking comfort as long as we're willing to experience discomfort. But often in the shadows of that is hidden that desire to avoid.
Mm.
And that is poison.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, and it's also a really natural human instinct to lean away from things that hurt or that
Yes.
we're afraid of or that feel really uncomfortable. And the path of awakening involves a willingness to do all of those
Yeah.
at once.
Yeah. I feel like you're currently myth busting right there. It's like I know at a certain point in my journey there was a belief that the awakening journey was going to be blissful and peaceful and all about love and beauty and things that felt good. And clearly that is not true. And
No.
in fact, there is a lot of facing pain, darkness, hurt, discomfort. And within that, there can be a lot of beauty and love and sensitivity that's uncovered and cultivated. So the journey includes both, and it's actually impossible to have one without the other.
Yeah. And look, you definitely can't have one. Anyone who knows those, you know, uh, peace, love, and light, rainbows, and unicorns kind of people, to me, they're like the scariest people on the planet. Those people are dangerous.
Mm,
Like, to me, the most loving person in the room is the person that can embody an equal amount of darkness to light.
mm,
They
mm-hmm.
don't shy away from any experience.
Yeah.
It's all of it.
Yes.
And to me, that is also the most liberated, free person in the room. They're not bound by, all the jargon of life, but also not bound by, the beliefs of duality, the opposites.
Yes.
And when any time I'm suffering, I know I'm bound. I'm believing something that isn't true. I'm stuck in some kind of dualistic state.
Yeah.
And that is what suffering feels like.
Yes.
Any kind of hurt, emotional feeling that exists in my body is arising from a false belief, something that isn't true.
Yes.
And understanding that isn't enough to actually to heal. Healing requires something specific. We won't go down that rabbit hole because this is about sensitivity, but healing requires three things to sort of come into alignment together to fully liberate something. But we have to be sensitive enough to notice those things and have the willingness to feel those uncomfortable feelings to actually move through the path.
Yes.
Whereas what I see in culture is that most people that go, whether it's spiritual healing, therapy or psychology or whatever, people are looking to heal everywhere and not finding it. And so the only way that can be found is the willingness to feel all of it.
Yes.
And it starts there. And only then can healing begin. And so until that sort of comes online in our culture, which I don't see happening in, this lifetime or probably any others any soon, that culture sort of moving in the opposite direction to deeper distraction and deeper nuance of other experiences of stuff in life rather than what's actually available internally.
Yes.
But I think in some ways, in terms of the reactivity piece, it's one of the reasons I stopped being on social media was I just couldn't bear to be around all the carry on that I was seeing on there, that the reactivity. But at some point I realized that that's kind of the beauty of social media, because all this judgment and reactivity and dumping and blaming on other people and the shaming and all the toxic shit behaviors that exist in us as humans, and I'm not exempting myself. But social media has given that permission to play out because people can hide at home behind their phones, behind their keyboards, and say or do whatever they want. But that stuff used to always play out, but it just played out in people's homes. Now people are actually seeing it in society and can see how toxic it is. And to me, it's one of the gifts of social media is that, it'll have to go on for quite a long time for people to really see how abusive and destructive it is. But at the same time, it allows those qualities to be seen, because until they're seen, they can't be seen through.
Yes.
And until we've suffered them enough, we won't have the desire to liberate from them. So it's kind of a really beautiful paradox. But the permission for the reactivity out there will eventually be a segue to sensitivity for the people that choose it.
Yeah. So what you're saying, it's like humanity saturating in it via social media and other forms like that.
Yeah.
And that saturation at one point, whether it's years or decades from now, but that saturation leads to the breakthrough.
Yeah. Because when you steep in shit long enough, you get sick of the stench and you'll want to shift.
Yeah.
And that's the only way it ever happens. It never happens any other way than until people get sick of whatever it is they're living or being. It's the same with government.
Yeah.
As soon as the people change and get sick of something, they'll do something different. But until then, nothing will change. People will have to continue to cycle in the suffering until they're willing to do what it takes to get out of it. This is just as simple as that.
Yeah. Let's take a jump back to the meditation that you brought up, because one of the key components of meditation that supports this journey of sensitivity is a full feeling breath, a breath that where we're present to our body, present to the sensations, present for the feelings in our body. So that full feeling breath is something that we will always guide people towards. And I know in my own practice, if I'm having trouble breathing, it's usually because there's something stored in my body that's feeling uncomfortable or difficult or challenging to be with. So the full feeling breath that comes down into the belly, the pelvis, and opens my body from the inside. In that full feeling breath, I get to be sensitive to what's here now? What am I feeling today? What's stirring in my body? So the breath is such a powerful and supportive key, I find, for connecting with feelings and then being able to expand the capacity for sensitivity.
Mm.
Can you say more about the role of the breath in sensitivity or your own journey with it?
Yeah, you kind of summarized it all there.
Mm.
But like the breath in some ways is like if you've ever run your hand through like a puddle or a pond and it stirs up
Mm.
all the muck on the bottom.
Mm.
So really deep, full breath will stir up the feelings in the body.
Mm.
So, and there's a couple of things that are happening there. One, like for you, where do you notice your emotions or feelings rising from?
From the
From
lower
the
belly, or
lower belly.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the energy center there is what governs our emotional feelings. So
Mm.
feelings will always rise from the belly. They'll always kind of belly up. They never come from the head down.
Mm.
So thoughts do, but
Mm.
feelings don't move that way. So the full feeling breath requires the attention on the base of the body. Where our attention goes, energy flows. So by placing our attention there, we naturally start to stir up the base of the body.
Mm.
But then with holding our intention for our breath to go deep into the base of the body is like stirs up and opens the base of the body, but it opens the pathway to feel.
Mm.
And so our attention and intention on the lower belly will add energy to the lower part of the body, which will magnify any of the feelings that are there.
Mhm.
And the breath that's there will stir up what needs to be felt. And that whatever comes up first will be the thing that needs to be felt most, or at
Mm.
least the thing that needs to be felt first.
Mm.
But then the feelings will move in a really specific way. They'll move in layers.
Mhm.
And so as one's fully felt, as a feeling, like for emotions and feelings that they rise in the body and they come up, the reason it feels that way is it's the emotion or the feeling leaving the body.
Mhm.
Now, and emotions and feelings are kind of interchangeable, but not. You
Mm.
have a really good distinction on that. Do you want to just
Mm.
offer that so people understand when we're using those two terms
Yeah.
what the differences are?
Sure. So emotions are the stored feelings in the body. So stored from past experiences, past hurts, past incomplete moments, you could say. Whereas feelings are a response to the right now moment. So, for example, if I received distressing news, being sad in response to that distressing news would be feeling the current moment feelings. Receiving good news, being happy in this moment, is the feelings of this moment. Whereas, let's say, things like road rage or uh, being upset about the cliched spilt milk kind of analogy, those things tend to be that something happens and then all the stored emotions in the body get activated. So all the past incomplete feelings get brought to the surface. So emotions have charge and history, whereas feelings is current moment response.
Mm. Yeah, and for most people, from working with people, what I've realized is they never think about this. But
Mm.
if you if you're listening to this, if you think about it, when a feeling comes up and you don't want to feel it, you wait for it to disappear. But where does it go? What happens to it? Because it doesn't go.
Mm.
It
Mhm.
stays stored in the body. It'll stay stored in the energy center it's relevant to, and from there, the organs, the glands, and the internal. I'm not sure with all the physical stuff, but it will stay stored in the body.
Mm. Mhm.
And so that's why, like, if you know what Martina referenced really is being triggered. When person's triggered, what's happening is all their stored emotions are getting rushed to the surface. Whatever the person's done is going to mirror something that's happened a lot in someone's life. And so it touches that pathway, and that pathway is so open and reactive. The person who's triggered reacts immediately. If you haven't listened to the Triggers podcast, we've got, go and listen to that. That'll unpack what that means, but essentially the person who's triggered is actually the one who has the work to do, not the person who's triggering the person. Because being triggered is just the stored emotions in the body being activated and revealing to us that, this is where life wants me to do this work. Life wants me to see this right now because that's what's rising in my body, wants me to feel what hasn't been felt. And it's it's feeling what's there is what leads to it being liberated from the body. It feels like release. It feels like freedom. It's a deep letting go by surrender, surrendering to the feelings and feeling them so fully that they move up, and feel them fully, they move out. And there's really specific flavors to that when it's leaving the body, but I don't know.
Yeah. And some of those feeling states, I know we've spoken about this before, that some of those feeling states are really delicious. So there can be a tendency of like wanting to hold on to them, but it's important to recognize that they do actually have a sense of completion and passing, and any sense of trying to hold on to a feeling actually will generate more suffering and more struggle.
Yeah, it reinforces it because with each emotional feeling that is felt in the body, there's also like chemical hormones and endorphins released. So we can even become addicted to emotional states, especially strong ones like anger or reactivity, frustration, hurt, sad, being a victim. Like all these release chemicals in the body, and we can become addicted to those without ever realizing that we're addicted to them because we just stay in this what feels like a toxic cycle of if you're experiencing that feeling of like, the same problems seem to come up in different ways in different areas, that's one of those signals.
Yes.
There's something there that hasn't been felt, there's something there that hasn't been seen, but you're sensitive enough to notice the surface level, anger or frustration or hurt or sadness or fear, vulnerability, all these surface type emotions that are really obvious, are just letting you know that there's something there, sensitive enough to feel those. And if you're really noticing all of those, then you're really ready to sort of go a little bit deeper with it.
Now, I wanted to segue to intimate relationships because obviously that's a big part of what our work is about, but also this discussion around reactivity and sensitivity, specifically on the journey of awakening through love. Reactivity will not support me to wake up, but it's also not going to support my partner to wake up. Whereas my sensitivity, there's a waking up in my sensitivity, but then there's also an opportunity that when I reveal my sensitivity in intimate relationship, that it can create awakening within you or within somebody's intimate partner. So this is such a valuable and important quality to develop, sensitivity in our intimate relationship, for multiple reasons. But I'd love you to tease out, how is it that our sensitivity serves as a possible waking up within our intimate relationships?
Yeah, it's not just possible. In some ways, it's the only way. It's it's why so many people suffer in relationship, because they're unwilling to be sensitive and to feel. So, like, part of this is the nature, the underlying heart energy of men and women. So, so especially for me, a man with an alpha heart, you as an omega being with an omega heart, process and experience the world completely different to you. Like, having been a hairdresser for 30 years, what I noticed was that it's women and men see the world in completely different ways. We can be looking at the exact same thing, and a woman's experience of that is filtered through a completely different lens to what a man's is. So I just want to precursor anything I say with that, because how I experience the moment is going to be so different to how you experience the moment. Does that make sense? And both are right.
Yes.
That's the important thing
Yes.
to remember.
Yes.
Both are right.
Mm.
They're just different.
Mhm.
And so learning to see the differences is a really important part. Now, I felt it was really important to say that, and then I forgot your question.
That's okay. I've still got the question. I just want to really underline what you said is that both are right and they're different, because that's where that is actually the source of so much reactivity in relationships. It's like, my perspective's right, mine's right, you're wrong, you're right. It's like that whole cycle is where so much destruction and chaos happens. But the question underneath all that was the gift of sensitivity in bringing awakening to our
That's
intimate
right.
relationships.
Yeah. So say like in our dynamic, like let's say I do something unconscious or habitual, something that hurts. If you come to me with like, oh, when you said this, you used this tone and I felt this and it was derogatory and I felt disrespected and blah, 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 and all the other things that you felt. For me as a man, that feels more like an attack.
Mm.
So if I feel attacked, impulsively, my body's going to want to defend itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, immediately, that's how an argument starts. Attack and defend, attack
Yeah.
and defend. It's like all of a sudden I'm sitting here all peaceful and I feel like I'm being attacked.
Mm.
So that's a reaction to sensitivity will usually cause an argument or separation. It creates a division because what's happening is that, I've said or done something.
Mm-hmm.
You felt hurt or pain. You've judged me as wrong. So now you're blaming and criticizing. Judgment, criticism, blame create division and separation. So now we're divided and separated and we're in battle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the opposite of intimacy. Intimacy literally means to be close, particularly the felt experience of the space between two people, feeling close, feeling intimate. So that's how most relationships function. Sensitivity would be I say or do the unconscious thing, you feel hurt or sad or whatever. So then you start actually feeling the hurt and sad. And so then you will feel it so fully that I can see it in your eyes, in your breath, in your posture. And then I notice that you're hurting or that you're sad or whatever. That calls me to presence. It's like, oh, she's crying, she's sad, she's hurting. Oh, that call to presence is me waking up in that moment. I'm waking up to the fact that, hang on, you're crying and that started and you're hurting and you're sad. And that started right after I finished speaking. Interesting. Now I could just dismiss that if I wanted to remain unconscious, or I could notice it and go, how do these two relate? What is it I've said? What was the tone? How does she experience life? She experiences life through her feeling state. Something that I said is creating a feeling state of hurt and sadness and pain. What is it? So now I've started the path of self-inquiry. So her sensitivity and feeling state has interrupted my unconscious habitual state of being. I've woken up to this fact that something's happening. I don't know what it is. Now I've started to self-inquire. And that's the path to awakening. Self-inquiry is identifying what it is. What is it that I said or that I did that is causing this? And where does that particular way of being emerge from? What does it come from? And, and it'll always come from a thought or a belief, particularly that's false. I'm believing something that isn't true, that's justifying this particular state of being. And it's that process specifically that allows sensitivity to wake a person up. So if Martina says or does something that I feel really hurt or sad, I just feel it, but feel it so openly, so transparently that she can see right through me, to see every part of how I'm feeling. I'm not trying to hide or protect it or just like, white knuckle it. Like I'm not going to be sad. I'm not going to show it. I'm going to feel it, but I'm not going to show it. It has to be so transparent and open that the feeling state is so openly displayed that it's undeniable, absolutely undeniable. And it's kind of like, especially in intimate relationship, like if your partner's crying or hurting or sad in some way, whether it's a man or woman or, non-gender specific, it calls the other person to presence immediately because the truth of their heart is being displayed. when someone's vulnerable, exposed, and hurting, it's unlikely an intimate partner is going to choose to attack.
Mm,
So it's like it invites presence, it invites care, it invites, delicate, sensitive, aware.
mm,
It calls me to presence, it calls me to wake up to what it is that I can't see.
mm,
So
mm.
it's that specifically.
Yeah.
But it all begins with the willingness to feel our feelings so deeply and so fully, and that it's as if every cell in our body is transparent and
Mm,
allowing it to be seen, not
yes.
hiding anything. It's like a full, complete letting go or surrender into the feeling. I'm not collapsing around it. I'm not nodding into a story. Like Amiga or the feminine has to be wide enough not to collapse. Collapse only happens when Amiga or feminine is closed. So I have to be wide enough and open enough and transparent enough to stand in front of that person without collapsing into story or attack, feeling the hurt so fully, allowing it to be seen long enough that they notice.
Mm,
Not that I notice, because I already notice that I'm hurting,
mm,
that they notice. And if I can't hold it long enough or stay with the feelings long enough for them to notice, they can't wake up.
mm,
But there's nothing about me going, well, you said this and you said it this way and you did it this way and you did it that way is going to create any kind of intimacy, closeness, or any kind of openness or presence in the relationship. It's just a form of emotional abuse, hidden or disguised as expression.
mm,
It's actually abuse.
mm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you made the distinction there because, yeah, there's certainly nothing about being told, having been the person who's done the telling and been on the receiving end of telling. There's nothing in that creates consciousness, love, intimacy, connection,
No.
but the revealing of the feelings. Like I know the times when I've seen those raw, transparent feelings in your body, on your face, and then I've been able to go, oh, what did I say? What did I do? Where was I coming from? What? And it's like fireworks can go off then because
It's like a lightning bolt.
something's revealed,
Yeah.
and it does it. The person who is feeling the feelings, it does require being able to hold attention and energy in your own body when it feels most uncomfortable. And that's often the part that's the big stretch for me. It's like when it feels uncomfortable, there's kind of a habit that I'll want to like put my attention over there, and then to use that breath and the awareness of my body to, as you described, to stay in and stay wide and stay connected to myself, and to feel it all the way through and do the whole revealing the underbelly, imagining myself like one of our cats, of like rolling over onto their back and revealing their belly. It's like being able to hold myself in that. And that's where, for me, the Amiga practice of spending time each day in feelings and movement helps train that pathway to be able to reveal. Because being able to reveal in the moment can be excruciating and difficult without training. But if I see my daily practice of Amiga feeling and movement, if I see that as that's me training to be able to reveal in the moment when I most need it. So, yeah, the training of sensitivity in our bodies takes time and patience and love and compassion for that journey within when it can feel really difficult.
Yeah. And that's true for anybody. Like
Mm-hmm.
whether you're a man or a woman or non-gender specific, like the relationship to sensitivity is for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and it is really important that it is practiced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think there's slightly different challenges for men and for women around sensitivity. I think because for men have so often been told that it's not okay to feel, they're not okay to have feelings, and the shame for men around that.
Mm.
So, do you have any specific suggestions for men in their journey of learning to feel?
Yeah, before we go there
Mm,
though, just on the last piece,
mm,
the way to identify if you're, you know, abusing your partner or if
mm,
you're showing them how you feel is when we show how we feel, there's always the quality of revealing. And specifically, what comes with that is the feeling of being exposed,
mm,
as we're totally vulnerable. Because when we reveal how we feel, we're we're liberating ourselves, to be honest.
mhm,
But we're allowing that person to see so fully exactly who we are and exactly where we're at, our capabilities, where we're open and loving, and where we're absolutely failing and struggling. And that level of exposure is excruciating, and it can feel a little bit like you're about to die. And that's why most people will shy away from that. But if you're looking to identify at home whether or not you're revealing how you feel or you're expressing how you feel with what our culture's been, taught, which is closer, the more sensitive you become, the more you'll experience that as abuse. I know it can be really functional for people, and it is a great segue, but at some point it has to be let go of. And what has to come is that willingness to be so exposed, so transparent, and specifically that exposure and that willingness to be that exposed is what creates intimacy. It's only when I'm so exposed, there's no barrier between Martina and I will feel closer to her than I've ever felt to another human. But it's because I took the barrier down. I revealed it. I exposed all of who I am and how I feel. And in that, intimacy is created. It's created through vulnerability. So if there's not a, a high level of vulnerability accessible in the body for each person in the relationship, there'll always be a feeling of a gap or distance. So if I feel a gap or distance in our relationship, I know I'm not being vulnerable enough. There's something I'm hiding or keeping to myself or holding back. And what that does is creates the feeling of distance or space in the intimacy, not space, but feels like distant.
mm,
Yeah.
mm.
So I just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah,
What was
yeah,
your question that
beautiful.
you asked me again?
Yeah. So some suggestions for men, given the given the layers of conditioning men have around not feeling.
Yeah, okay. It really depends because some men are still highly disconnected that I see in culture and don't have, or in the world, have any access to their feelings.
Mhm,
Some are so heavily overly identified, they're knotted in an emotional contraction
mhm, mhm,
and they're identified with their emotions so fully that they're almost incapable of functioning.
mm,
So that's a pretty wide range. And then I actually see men who are actually quite consciously feeling
mm,
and actually feel more skillfully than a lot of women do,
mhm,
because I know a lot of feminine embodiment practice is performance
mm,
orientated and doesn't have the connection to the truth of the heart
mm,
and the embodiment of feeling and expression. So there's actually a really wide range of men that I
mm,
see, from completely disconnected to actually more fully embodied and aware and expressive, in terms of authenticity, truth, and healthy emotional
mm,
responsibility. I actually see more coming from men. So
mm,
it's a real paradox to try and speak to it. But if I was
mm.
to speak to the extreme men, like men who can't feel, I can do that. They're probably not listening to this podcast. But for those men, I would say is it's very difficult to access on your own. And I would start by listening to what your partner has to say. If she says that you're sad or upset or hurt in some way, or she's noticing that, listen. And then instead of going, because most likely that man's going to go, fuck off, I don't feel sad. If I felt sad, I would have said I felt sad. Something like that, because that's exactly what I would have said. And and really what you want to do is take that information that your partner shared and then go, how is it true?
Mm,
Where is it true?
mhm,
Where is it true and I can't see?
mhm,
How would it be to be on the receiving end of whatever it is I'm saying or doing? How would
mm,
that feel? And then imagine someone speaking or doing or whatever the thing is, and start to inquire that way.
mhm,
The other way to do it is through journaling practice, which I found really helpful. Um, this is going to have a lot of expletives in it. So if you have children with you, turn the volume down now. How I would start And this started when I was younger and I broke up from a relationship with a woman I was deeply in love with. And so I wasn't really conscious at the time. So this is what came out. But I started my journaling like this: fuck, shit, cunt, motherfucker, son of a bitch, fuck you, you asshole, motherfucker, son of a selfish cunt, fucking blah, blah. And I just like wrote all the swear words that were just coming up in my mind, all the unconscious judgments and blame and dumping and toxic bullshit that was just rampaging through my body, wanting to go in her direction. So I did it on a journal note. I wrote all that sort of stuff. And then at the end of it, I just cried. I was so sad and I was so scared and I was afraid of being alone and I was afraid of, I'd failed my relationship, and I was so blocked with anger and rage that I couldn't access the feelings. So only clearing the anger and the rage allowed me to get to the feelings. Because in many ways, I would argue that anger is not an emotion. It's an activity, which means it's a reaction to a feeling, because anger can't exist without fear or sadness underneath it as a driver. And so, I would know that, but it didn't help me because like knowing it doesn't make any difference. I had to embody it. So that was the healthiest way that I could find as an unconscious man to try and start to bridge that gap to my feelings. Because when like in my life, especially as a young man, all I really felt was either anger or happiness. And they were kind of the two. Now, it's great there was at least two. Could have been worse. Could have been one.
Or none.
Or none. Yeah, well, yeah, none.
We see that.
Yeah. And so it's like I had to go through the anger to get to the fear and sadness, but there's not a lot of permission for anger. But because anger is reactive to those things, it's very easy to believe that our anger is justified, and it's very easy to justify our anger. And when we can justify our anger, it appears true. Now, that's really relevant, and it's not relevant at all, because more than one thing is true in the moment always. So yes, that's true from one perspective. Now we want to find out what else is true, because to look for one single truth is a fool's game, and it won't lead anywhere. It leads to self-delusion, self-righteousness, and an incredibly strong and powerful ego that will create
stuckness,
immense suffering and stuckness. So for those men, I would start there and use that as the segue to the feelings. If tears come, allow them. And the way to feel a feeling is to allow the sensations to be there, and they'll move on their own. That's all you have to do. So that would be the place to start there. For the men that are emotionally contracted and knotted into their own emotional feeling states, clearly they have access to them. The emotional knot is essentially a reaction. It's a collapse, which means it's a resistance to feeling hidden under the desire of feeling. It's like hiding in plain sight. So by feeling so fully, they'll be talking about their feelings. If a person's talking about their feelings, they're not feeling. They're reacting to their feelings. So that person is hiding from their feelings by feeling their feelings. So it's very tricky for them to see through that on their own. And so for those men, it's like to notice the feeling and the sensitivity, to notice the desire to react, then to go and sit with that sensation, and then to self-inquire on that. That's the evolution of the earlier practice, but got to start somewhere. And so we want to identify what are the thoughts that exist beneath the feeling. And if you can't find a thought that exists beneath the feeling, stay with it longer. Spend a week on it every day. Meditate, journal, dig down. What was the thought that happened right before that feeling arose? Identify it, and then dig beneath that. Once you've identified the thought, you want to identify the belief, but you have to feel the feeling to do that. So otherwise you won't get there. It'll skew out to the side as a deflection or a reaction, a bouncing off. So for those men, I'd start there. And I think for the other men, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, there's a sense, as you described, coming out of that contracted state with the feelings, there's a sense of, through the inquiry, creating wider awareness.
Yeah, and that's something I would say to those men. It's like, if you're one of those men that's contracted and knotted around your own feeling experience constantly, and you feel like, one of the women friends, because I've certainly lived that part where I felt like one of the girls or one of the women, like I could hang out with women way easier than I could hang out with men, because women make sense. But that For the man that's knotted and contracted, you don't want to do concentration meditation. You want to do wide meditation. And so what I mean by that, concentration meditation will be like focusing on the area around your nostrils, anapana, um, concentrating on a specific energy center. You don't want to do like not all the time anyway. You want to have some wider, when you're knotted, you want to have the wider awareness meditation. So what that would look like is, you might close your eyes and start by feeling your body. And then you might want to like feel the edges of your body so that your attention's like filled your whole body, and then start to feel out past the body. And so maybe like 1 or 2 feet out to a meter. And then once your attention's there, you want to feel out to the edges of the room. So you want to feel the wall or the door or whatever's on your right and on your left, in front of you and behind you, then above you and below you. And then all of those at once. Just hold your attention out there and notice what's happened to the feeling. And that feeling will have changed in size, texture, and intensity. And from there, you want to feel it. That's what I would do for those men.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I want to speak to women's experience. Sorry, I'm going to have to clear my throat for a moment. It's a bit awkward with this big microphone in front of my face to clear my throat. But so, first of all, I'll speak from my experience as a woman, which I have the tendency to be somebody who moves fast and then doesn't feel the full depth of my feelings. There's a tendency to kind of almost logic myself out of my feelings, like to rise above the moment too quickly, too much. So I'm disconnecting and jumping up into the head. So for women who have that experience, it's very much about learning to slow down internally. And that's been one of the biggest things for me, is the slowing down internally, to be able to recognize, to feel, to be present with, to know that, there are feelings here and they get to have space. There's time, there's space, there's room for them. I don't have to keep moving fast. I don't have to avoid the discomfort and logic myself out of it. So really that's about slowing down, being with the breath, with myself in the moment, and keeping my attention, intention, and energy very much inside of my body. So, for the women who have trouble connecting with their feelings, start with slowing down, paying more attention to your breath, and really listening and feeling what's happening inside of the body. Then the other thing that I see quite commonly is a tendency for women to be reactive with their feelings. And so then to be having kind of explosions and reactions at everything, and kind of similar to how Rod described for the men, ending up contracted in emotional knots because there's an over identification with feelings, but then getting stuck in loops of feeling, reacting, feeling, reacting, feeling, reacting. And so similarly for that kind of woman, it is also a journey of slowing down, becoming present to the feelings in the body from that perspective of not just believing the very first thing that pops up. Because when there's a destructive kind of reactive feeling loop, it's kind of like the feelings and the thoughts are operating so fast together that it keeps that cycle and that loop active. So breaking it is coming back to slow body, deep breath. So essentially the same practice, but for a different kind of woman, for a different reason. And learning how to feel, it can be challenging, but it's also so, so beautiful and so rewarding, because when we learn how to feel, there's so much more richness and texture and nuance available in the moment. The other thing that I will do when I'm struggling with my feelings is using my journal, bit of a different way than what Rod described, although I have done that as well in the past. But nowadays, how I use my journal is to use the I feel practice that we share inside of Intimacy Oasis. So just this morning I sat down to my solo practice, like feeling chock-a-block full of feelings and like, oh, there's a lot going on here. And so for the first 10 minutes writing, I feel sad, I feel devastated, I feel disconnected, I feel hurt, I feel like I'm failing, and just writing and writing I feel statements so that it gave me the opportunity to become present to what felt like a bit of an emotional kind of backlog that was built up in my body. And so just being able to write them out, then at some point the tears popped and I started to cry. And I was like, oh, the relief and release of allowing the tears, allowing the sadness through. And then when I went into partner practice with Rod, being able to then bring those feelings even more fully in the face of being held and supported by Rod, holding me in that loving presence. So there are a few keys for women who are wondering how to connect with feelings. Also in our Amiga practice, we move and sound with our feelings because that helps unlock the stored habits of the way emotions are held in the body. So in the movement and feeling practice, it's like breathing through the body in such a way that we begin to unlock and open and allow what's there to bubble up and through the body. So yeah, because emotions can have a sense of being compacted in the muscles, compacted in the joints, compacted in different parts of our body. We move, we feel, we make sounds as a way of creating vibration and sensation in the body that helps with the opening up of those stored emotions. So feel like I just said a lot then about a woman's journey. Do you feel like there's anything I missed around that?
No.
No. Is there anything else that you would love for people to know about sensitivity?
Yeah, I think there's like a shadow side
Mm,
to it all, that never gets spoken about. But
mm,
one thing I notice, I don't know if you guys out there have noticed it, but like it's the people are very familiar and uncomfortable with what we're talking about in terms of, sorry, they're very familiar with the uncomfortable feelings that we're talking about, like whether it's anger, fear, sadness, hurt, vulnerability, feeling exposed, revealing, like all these are very uncomfortable, what in some ways people might frame them as a negative feeling,
mm,
you know,
mm,
but um, what I also notice that goes unnoticed is the equal and opposite side,
mm,
like of the positive, if you want to call them feelings, is that, like, and when I say positive feelings, I mean like love or joy or gratitude. And it's like I notice, like when I feel gratitude, like I thank someone, I'll be like, oh, thank you so much for what you've just, and they'll just straight away go, no, it's all right, I do that for anyone, it's okay. That's a person reacting to the discomfort of a positive feeling,
mm,
because they're not able to actually receive or feel the intensity of gratitude being offered. And so whatever my relationship is, say, to the negative feelings, if I'm only willing to feel, say, to a 5 of negative feelings, what I can't see is that in life I can only feel a 5 in positive feelings. So as my willingness to feel what we call the darker or the more negative emotions or feelings or sensations, if I increase that out to a 9, my capacity to feel the joy, the love, the appreciation, the beauty in life also mirrors that, moves out to a 9. It doesn't just stay 1. It's like it breathes. And
mm,
so I think I would say to people, notice any areas or spaces where you lean away from the positive feelings because they're equally as intense and equally as uncomfortable, but they get dismissed so quickly. People don't even notice they're dismissing them. But if I dismiss those beautiful feelings of gratitude or love or joy or appreciation, I don't allow them into my body because I can't feel them or stay with their discomfort, then life starts to feel barren and dry. And I start to feel resentful of like, why is there so much suffering and why is life so shit? It's because I won't allow it to be good or great or beautiful.
Mm,
And so that's probably the thing that I would point to,
mm,
rather than dive into, because there's not much to dive into. It's the same as the other side. There has to be a
mm,
willingness to feel. But in some ways, by being willing to feel the more uncomfortable, darker, or negative feelings, or whatever you want to call those, the other side just opens up naturally. Whereas if
mm.
you open up this side, it doesn't necessarily help you open up the other side.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I can feel in feel in my body the vulnerability of letting love, appreciation, being seen. I can feel how vulnerable it is to fully let it in. So I'm glad that you named that. Mm,
Yeah. Yeah. It's really
mm,
uncomfortable. And in some ways, we're exposed again
mm,
because if somebody knows how much we appreciate them or what they did, it's like they've got another little secret about us that we've let
mm,
out. We're
mm,
revealing again. And that
mm,
exposure is uncomfortable, whether it's positive or negative. It's just the exposure is the uncomfortable part.
mm, mm. Yeah. Oh, wow. What a great conversation we've had about sensitivity.
Mm.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. I thank you for listening. We would love to hear your questions. Please leave any questions in the comments or feel free to email us. For those in our Intimacy Oasis community, this is going to be our topic for this month. So we look forward to diving in even deeper with you. And for anybody who might be interested in becoming an Intimacy Oasis member, you can go ahead and sign up on our website so that you can also dive into the exploration of sensitivity.
And if you're coming to the men's or women's group, definitely do some journaling around this topic and come with some questions, and be willing to maybe share some of your self inquiries as we explore this. I think tonight is women's circle and next week is men's circle. So for those of you that are curious about it, dive into it, do a little bit of exploration, and then we'll dive much deeper in the calls. Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Thank you.